Right. Welcome to Stories of a Colorful World, Conversations with Authors. And so today we want to introduce you to author Jacquelyn Randle, author of I'll Love You Wherever You Go. All right. So, Jacquelyn, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I'm an educator of about 15, 16 years now. And I've always been an avid reader. I've always been an avid writer. I want to say I started reading at like 3 or 4. Like I was a very early reader. And naturally, I just took to writing. And I took I took a pause like college years. And then I picked it back up and just haven't really stopped since.
So you've always kind of like aspired to be a writer?
Yes, like I was one of those kids that like knew early on, like I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be a teacher. So I did the teacher half first, and then I like phased in the writing, and we're here. Like just kept it going.
Just that natural progression.
Yes.
Were there any like books that that really inspired you when you were a child?
My parents had all the like classic Black books, and so the Young Gifted in Black and Kindred and like all of those classics, even the Iceberg Slim books, like I read all of those. And so I just had that literacy. Like we were that family that had the whole encyclopedia set, like the botanical. So it was just like you don't have a choice but to read, like and like read it. Like
listen, there are so many people who don't know what you're talking about when you say the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Like
you remember having the whole
yes.
the whole range. And now there's Google.
Yes, Google took over, and it's
exactly
one of those.
Exactly. Exactly. So I Love You when wherever you go almost feels like a love letter to like a younger sibling. So the older sister in the book tells the baby sister like all of her hopes and dreams for her, and like anticipating not only the good times but you know those times of conflict. What and what kind of inspired you to write that book?
Actually, the love shown between my daughters. They have a nice gap. It's like three years, and so my bond with my eldest was so tight. Like I had this nervousness of like, oh my God, they're not gonna like each other. How am I gonna bond? And from day one, they instantly connected, and so every illustration in the book is actually based off of a picture they have together. And so like them being outside, we have like an actual picture of them doing that. Like we have a picture of them reading, and it's like my eldest, she actually kind of helped craft it because she talks to her little sister, and like she'll talk to her about like strangers and all of these like, it's like these little deep life lesson conversations, and that's kind of what like started the book, just watching them.
So she takes her role as the big sister very seriously.
Yes, and I was so shocked because she was glued to me, and then like she just shifted to her sister, and I was like, oh, hey, look at that! Like it was a pleasant surprise. I think like most people have like that fear, like, how is this going to work? So
absolutely, especially when bringing a new child into the house, you never know how they're going to get along, how they're going to relate to one another, whether it's going to be that sibling rivalry.
Yes.
all of those things. So you have definitely been blessed
Yeah.
to have that type of relationship.
Yes. I was very shocked. Like they have their random like ramble moments, but for the most, like they're always holding hands. They're always helping each other. They're always still sleeping together. Like it's
Oh,
it's the most adorable thing, and I was just like, look at you guys. Like who knew? Like
that is awesome. Is that what also inspired you to add like the tips for parents about, adjusting to new babies in the back of the book?
yes, because with my like bond, and I just was like, I was in mom groups like, so how do you make the adjustment? Like I found myself asking those questions, and how do you keep the bond, and how do you balance the time? Because I was going to school, I was working, and I'm like, how do you guys do this? So at least give me some tips. And as the book was getting written, I reached out to a couple professionals that I know that actually work with like conscious discipline and those things, and they helped craft those in the back of the book.
That's awesome. So are you self-published?
Yes, I am self published. I actually have a publishing company, CNE Reflections Inc., and we offer editing. We offer services for others that want to do self publishing. So if they just want us to take over the book and do it for them, or we do the like step by step, this is how you do it. Because one of the things I saw was not only are we not represented in books, but on the back end, we really are not represented. And it's very hard to get that proper representation and payment
Right.
for the work that we're doing. So,
Absolutely. So I was going to ask, like, was that important for you to like create that company just to make sure this publishing company to make sure those books get out?
yes. And I wanted, and I found it like being a reader, like an avid reader, I found like, though I appreciate kind of getting our library puts like a sticker if it's an African American author. Like, though I appreciate it, but if I'm looking for a sci-fi book, I want it to be in the sci-fi area. I don't want it to be in like this is the black section. And so I just kind of started being like, okay, so something's got to change, and we got to get something a little bit more where we're putting our narrative out and we're controlling that narrative.
Right. I it is definitely so needed. Um, as you're thinking about that, like, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
Um, I think always to perfect your craft. You never hit a point where you're just the greatest or the best. There's always something new to learn. Even myself. So I study under somebody that's traditionally published and have had books turned into movies, and I study under somebody that is just solely self-published, and the information is incredible. So always studying, always perfecting your craft, and to take advice with a grain of salt. So take but take it with a grain of salt, because like if your book is good. I think that
Mhm.
maybe spring we did a campaign, and it showed I think Baldwin, he got denied like 56 times or something. Like it was like a crazy amount, and it's a great book. Like you have to know this is a great book, and I'm going to push it out. And that's why I like self-publishing. Like if it's a good story. And that's the joy of self-publishing, because a lot of people do kind of get beat down about that first denial letter, and so they
Right.
just put the book on the shelf when it's actually something somebody needs to hear and get that information from.
And you definitely have to have a thick skin and be persistent to really get it out there, because there's so many people in the field. And so, like, when you're thinking about a traditional, publishing company or one of the big publishing houses, they're getting, manuscripts all day, every day, thousands, by the boatload. And so you really do have to, like, continue to push on in order to do it, particularly for those authors of color or those illustrators of color who are trying to get out there, because we know that that's even narrower.
Yes. Part of that campaign, there was an agent on Twitter, and she posted how many books she had like sent to her and how many she denied and how many she kept, and it was such a small amount. And there was also I think it was like Twitter paid me or something,
Oh
or
yeah,
publishing paid
publishing
me.
pay
And
me. Mm-hmm.
some writers who I have no idea were getting like hundreds of $1,000 deals and have never seen their book even in the library. And you have black writers that have series that are bestsellers and they only got maybe 30 or 40,000. And so it is really crazy when you look at it, and it depends on the agent that you pitch to, what they're looking for. And it's very interesting because it's so much that they don't teach us, and we really have to get like inside info to even know about.
Right. So, what does diverse representation in children's book mean to you?
I think it means showing like all sides, showing those families that have grandma and grandpa staying in the house, showing the single parent family, showing families with all shades, not just what people perceive or all abilities. I think we get boxed in a lot. We get the same stories, and a lot of the newer authors I've seen are coming out with those stories of just just a black kid and their dog on the beach.
Right.
And I love it because like we have those normal interactions,
Right.
and it doesn't have like, I appreciate our books about hair and color and loving us, but my baby wants to read a book about the dog on the beach because she took her dog on the beach. Like we
Right.
have these
Right.
things. So giving us that representation, and I think that was part of why I wanted to show that sibling love. Like this is just two siblings that love each other, that are doing something that, regardless if you're a boy or a girl, you can see yourself in this book. Like you helped your sister at the park, or you helped your brother, get ready for bedtime or whatever. Like you can see yourself in the book. And I really, really love the trend that writers are starting to put that representation out there.
Right. Because we definitely need balance, right? We we can't have all, like, this is our struggle, this is our struggle, this is our struggle, without, okay, we have joy as well. We do, how can you normalize, relations if you never see normalized
Like,
doing those everyday things, or even being superheroes or
yeah,
sci-fi or all of those things. Like, we could go to space too.
yeah, it is just like, my eldest, she's a gamer. Like, give me a book about, a black kid that's a gamer, and they go and fall into the video game or something. Like, give me something, like something here. Like, I know a lot of the teen authors are starting to write those genres. Like, it's a lot of like black vampires coming out soon. Like they're putting it in there. Like we like that stuff too. We do.
Right. And that's what we are seeing, like middle grades and YA authors are all kind of like, you see a lot more of it. And I just wish that there was a lot more in terms of like picture books and books for younger children to also see like some of those trends and like filter down as well. Because one of the things that we have is a newsletter that focuses on like male, brown and black male characters. And in the same way that we're starting to see more characters of color in like those chapter books and young adult books, seeing them also in picture books and for younger readers.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and people are starting to pay more attention, and people are starting to ask. And one of the things we do at CNE, we do studies before like we push anything out. We do like a trial run of like that demographic and see if they really like it, if it's something, you know, that can be added. Is it, even with our older books, like, is this relatable? Like, will the kids actually like this? Um, for me, one of the things that I was cognitive of is, as a parent, at the end of the night, I don't want to read a lengthy book. And I think like a lot of the more traditional authors don't think about that. So yeah, it's a very cute story, but most mom and dads are gonna paraphrase this.
Right.
Or we're gonna hide this book. And so I didn't want any of our books to be like that.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like, I wanted it to be where if a kid wanted to read it, they could read it on their own. And if it became that this is my favorite book, a parent wouldn't mind it, because there are some books where I'm skipping a lot of the pages. It may be a classic, but we're gonna paraphrase because it's bedtime. We're like, and I think like as a consumer, like those things matter.
Right.
Like those things matter, and so hearing like honest feedback from parents and kids before we put anything out is really, really important, and it makes it a different experience for writers, because we're adults writing for kids. So what we write
Right.
may be completely off base. So
Right.
it keeps us tuned in a little bit.
I definitely know what you mean, because sometimes we get books and they say they're geared for, let's say, ages like 4 to 8, but it's like 65 pages, and it's like this is not. Teachers are not going to read this for a read aloud. They don't have that much time. Parents are not going to read this maybe over a couple of days, but kids want to get to the ending. They want to see how the problem is resolved. And so it does make it really difficult if they don't keep that in mind. Like, it's a great story, a great idea, but for the age range that you're going for, it really is a little too long.
Yes, like there's books where I was just like, this is gorgeous,
Right.
but it's long. And like, we'll be at the library. We're a library family, so before the shutdown, I'm like, you can go pick whatever book, and she would bring me books, and if it was one of those books, I'll be like, oh hey, look at this one. What about this? And so just being cognitive of that is something, like, as a writer, because you want to tell this great story, but you have to make it kid friendly. You got to make it mom and dad friendly, because the mom and dads are going to be the ones that buy it and read it at the end of the day. So, yes.
Absolutely. That's why people are always for like Disney or, those movies where like, this was not for kids. And so it's like, but the parents have to bring them. So they have to make it relatable for the parents while still keeping it kid friendly. Or the parents wouldn't go.
Yeah. There was a book, and it just was like, I didn't know what it was, but it was like a random book she found. and it was like about birds with anxiety. And I was like, okay, whatever. And so like it had these crazy pictures of like birds, but the jokes were for the adults. And so I was like, okay, I get it. Okay, the kids are just laughing at the pictures, but the
Right.
adults reading it get the joke. And I'm like, those are to me like the perfect book because you hit everything. And it
Right.
wasn't too long. It wasn't, it was just right. So I think we strive to kind of put out just right books and just right like products. Like we don't I don't like long books. It's bedtime is bedtime. So
Right. Most parents are trying to get it over as quickly as possible
yeah.
to get kids down. Are there any, let's say, must read children's books that you would recommend for families? Maybe ones that you enjoy reading with your either with your daughters or that you like to read as a teacher as well.
As a teacher, I like, of course, as a teacher, I like the classic Eric Carle books. We were reading one yesterday, and she kind of just took over. And she was like, "Hey, I know those words," and I'm like, "What you do? Here you go." And so I think those you can kind of tell the teacher influence in certain books, but
Right.
I like the word choice and the repetition of certain books. Um, but right now we love Princess Truly.
Mm.
Princess Truly. We love it. And it's just the images and the storylines and how like the series has like progressed. We really, really love that series. So those are my tops.
Okay. Do you guys have any special like story time rituals or anything?
um, I made it since the shutdown because things slowed down a lot. I was like, we're gonna read 2 books a day. So
Mm.
when we first wake up, we read a book, and then right before bedtime, we read a book. And I let them pick. So we've been slowly working our way through the bookshelf because we have so many books, and you just start kind of like amassing this collection and not really reading them. And so every day we read one in the morning and one at night, and we're almost there. We're almost to the end. So we're gonna go back to the library because I was like, well, wait, we're just steady checking our library books, and we have shelves of books. So
Right. I can definitely relate to that. I've re organized my son's room and putting all the books on a new bookshelf and realizing there are certain books where he has 2 and 3 copies of the same book. And I'm just like, how did this happen? But it was just like books were everywhere. And so like getting them on the shelf, now we can see, okay, we have a lot of this same book.
yeah, I actually separated them so they have like the board books, paperback, hard books, like solely black books, the series, and I was like, we have a lot of books. Like we have like to the point where like you almost can even break it down. Like, okay, this is just African stories, or
Right?
this is stories about fall, and these are Halloween stories, and it's like great because a lot of kids don't have books,
Right.
but I'm like, we gotta read them like a little bit more than when we first get them. Like we gotta have to like actively read. So I think that reading twice a day has made it like more important, especially since we can't go to the library anymore.
Right.
And we have here where you can order your books and they'll bring them to the car, but it's
Oh,
not the same as being able to go and like hold it and look at it. Like you just kind of miss that feeling. So
right.
yeah,
Right. It's like the little pleasures
Yes.
that that you take for granted any other time, and like now you really see
Yes.
those cherished moments.
Like we had our librarians that we knew and kind of like have seen them grow up and was like, oh, I got this new book put to the side for you. Like now we don't get that anymore. So it's a little, I don't know.
Absolutely. Are you reading any good books right now?
I actually am going to reread Kindred. I did not know that it was the inspiration behind Antebellum. So Antebellum comes out next week, so I have a week to read it.
Okay.
I can catch all the little tidbits that will be put into the movie. So.
Oh, awesome. Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yes, I was like, wait, I gotta reread it. Okay.
So that is definitely good to know.
Yes.
And so, how are you currently working on anything, or is your publishing company working on anything that you care to share?
Yes. Actually, I'm working with an artist that she is a psychologist, and she's putting out a series of children's books covering different things from bullying to COVID to more serious subjects like depression and all of those heavier topics for kids that are a little bit older. And we are working on an actual second or follow up book to I Love You Wherever You Go. So we're excited.
And so, how can people get in contact with you?
You can follow us on Facebook. All of our tags are the same. So on Facebook, it's CER or CE Reflections Inc. And on Instagram, it's CE_Reflections Inc. And all of our details about anything coming up, where we'll be next, new releases are all on there. We're pretty active on social media. So, yeah.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that we drop a link in the chat with all of her information. Thank you so much. It has been so great speaking with you today. And I can't wait for our audience to actually get a hold of your book, because I'm sure they are going to love it as much as we do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.